Good afternoon, students. Today, we are going to determine the Young's modulus of a material of a bar by the method called method of flexure. Now, out of all the experiments in physics lab, this is one of the lengthiest experiment. But since you are not doing the experiment by yourself right now, so we will collect the data for you and give it to you. So your job will be just to calculate, and it is the easiest of the lot if you just think of the calculation. But if you do the experiment by yourself, then definitely it is one of the toughest experiment. When time comes and after your vaccination is completed and you will be permitted to enter the college as per university norm, then when you will do the experiments by your hands, then you must do this experiment by yourself. Okay, whatever because time will be very limited, but within that time you must do this experiment. You may skip laser experiment as a if you just look at it, you can understand what to do. But for Young's modulus experiment, you must do it by yourself, right? So let's start it. Okay. So first, what is Young's modulus? Now, if we plot stress versus strain graph, that means we are plotting strain along x-axis and the stress along x-axis, y-axis, then and we'll understand what is stress and strain first. This is the nature of the curve. Now, what is meant by Young's modulus? Here we are expecting to measure Young's modulus. Now, any material has a quantity, has a property called stiffness. We'll talk more about stiffness, but the point is the stiffness is related to elastic modulus. There are several elastic modulus. Some you have already studied in school days, like Young's modulus, rigidity modulus, bulk modulus, etc. Now, whenever you have a material, suppose this is a bar you have, and you are giving some force on it. Now, there are two types of forces that can be applied to it. One is called the longitudinal force. Another is called tangential force. Longitudinal force means generally whenever we give a force on a particular direction, suppose we are giving a force in this direction, as a result, and this end is say fixed. This end is fixed to a wall. So if I just give a force along this direction, so we are stretching it. As a result, the length will be increased. Depending on the stiffness of the material, the amount of increment will be seen, right? So this is the longitudinal force, goes along the lengthwise direction. And due to this type of force, we are changing the shape or size or volume of that material. So if it is a bar, whenever you are giving this force, its length is increased. Say thickness and width remains same. So suppose length is increased because we are giving the force along this direction, lengthwise direction, right? So this is the applied force. So you are supplying a force which is the applied force. And what is the cause of that force? Because is that you are the person who is supplying the force. So you are the cause. You are giving the force. And what is the consequence of the force? Consequence of the force is that the length is increased. If you are taking a volume, then due to that force, the volume can be increased. So anyway, either you are changing length, cross-section area, or volume by application of the force, right? And that change in configuration is termed as strain. Strain is nothing but a measure of the change in configuration. Let me suppose you have a bar of length L. Now, due to the application of the force, the length is changed to L plus delta L. So this is the change in force, change in length. Then strain will be change in length by original length. Right? So in general, we can say that strain can be defined as the change in configuration by the original configuration. Change in dimension to the original dimension. That is strain. And since it is a ratio of the similar quantities, like here, it is the change in length by length, change in volume by volume, change in area by area. So it is a ratio of similar quantities. So it is unitless. So strain is unitless quantity. Okay. So strain is a unitless quantity. Now, whenever you are supplying a longitudinal force like this, whose effect is to increase the length of the bar, then that strain you can be called as longitudinal strain. That's why in the manual, the books, you will observe the term as longitudinal strain, because this strain is developed due to the longitudinal force, the force which is applied along the longitudinal direction, along the lengthwise direction, right? Now, if I ask you which comes first, can you tell me what is stress? Because here we are talking about stress and strain. Can anyone tell me what is stress? Yes.
Sir, force per unit area.
Force per unit area. Anyone else? I'm not saying whether it is correct or not. Anyone else want to try? Apart from Harsha? Anyone else?
Sir, the pressure.
It is the
pressure.
Pressure.
Pressure per unit area.
Pressure per unit area. No. Pressure per unit area is not right. That means if Varsha is right that it is the area, force per unit area, then my next question is, which is dependent, which is independent? Strain and stress. Out of these two, which one is dependent, which one is independent?
Sir, strain is dependent.
Strain is dependent. Dependent on what? On stress.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. Now let me clarify. This is a very, very common notion, and in many books it is written in that way. But you just observe the graph. In that graph, I have plotted strain along x-axis, so I have stress along y-axis. And I told you at the beginning of physics lab that always remember that independent should be along x-axis, dependent along y-axis. There is a normal nomenclature. Universally, we use it so that we understand which is independent, which is dependent. But here I am plotting strain along x-axis. Why? Because that's definition of stress, that what you are saying is not fully correct. What I have said, that you are supplying some force, and due to that force, its length is changed, or volume is changed, or area is changed. And that change in configuration by the original configuration is called the strain. Like longitudinal strain is change in length by original length. Right? Now, stress is not this applied force per unit area. Please understand it. Stress is not the applied force per unit area. So what is actually happening? Whenever you are supplying a force on this bar, say, in a particular direction, so that its length, only suppose its length is increased by a small amount, say delta L, it was L, now change length, and this is the force you are supplying. So whenever strain is developed, strain means its shape is changed, its volume is changed, area is changed, whatever, something about the material is changed. Then due to its elastic nature, it tries to come back to its original configuration. Original configuration was L. It tends to come back to the original configuration. That means it wants to develop a force in the opposite direction, opposite to the applied force, such that it come back to its original configuration. So whatever increment was there, when the applied force was absent, it will come back to the original configuration. And to get back to the original configuration, it requires a restoring force. It requires a restoring force. That restoring force per unit area is called stress. This is stress. Please remember it. This is stress. Restoring force per unit area is the stress. So why is stress come? Because strain was developed. That's why strain is the independent and stress is the dependent between stress and strain. And if you say which is the fundamental independent, that is the applied force, of course. That is the applied force. But between stress and strain, stress is dependent on strain. Unless strain is developed, you do not have the stress. So again, you are supplying some force. Due to that force, some changes in the configuration of that material is observed. That change in configuration by original configuration is strain. So strain is developed. Now, due to that change in configuration, due to the elastic nature of the material tends to come back to the original configuration. So a restoring force is developed within it. That restoring force per unit area is called stress. That restoring force per unit area is called stress. So, and that ratio of that longitudinal stress, that means the internal force per unit area, restoring force per unit area, whatever you say, to the longitudinal strains within the elastic limit is called Young's modulus. What is meant by within the elastic limit? If you do not say this thing, then the definition is not correct. Now, observe this curve. The plot. Strain is independent and plotted along x-axis. Stress depends on strain, because once strain is developed, then only stress is developed, plotted along y-axis. And this is from 0, that means when there is no stress, no strain, there is no stress. Now, whenever strain is increased, stress is also increased linearly. So linearly increasing. So it is linearly increasing up to say A. After that, it is the yield point. After this yield point, stress and strain are not proportional. Here, up to this A point, stress and strain are proportional. But beyond that, they are not. So this region is the elastic region. And this is the limit. This is the elastic limit. Why? Because after that, suppose you are now here. Suppose you are now here at this point. So what is the stress? This is the stress at this point, and this is the strain at this point. Now, if I remove the strain, can I come back to the original thing, or if I just remove the applied force? By the way, please understand, this reactional force, which is developed within the material, which is called internal force, is hard to measure. But we know this internal force will be always opposite and equal to the applied force. That's why it is measured. The internal force or reactional force is measured as equal and opposite to the applied force. Right? That's why we always use the applied force, and that's why the misconception comes. Internal force is not same as the applied force. So stress is not the applied force per unit area. It is the internal force per unit area. But the value of the internal force is same but opposite to the applied force. So if suppose that force is removed here, if the force is removed, then it will come back, or excuse my drawing, it will come back to this. So you observe a permanent deformation is there. Even when the applied force is removed, there will be a permanent deformation. When the permanent deformation will be observed only when you cross this elastic limit. That's why any elastic modulus, not only Young's, any elastic modulus is always within the elastic limit. This because only then stress within the elastic limit, stress is proportional to strain. And that proportionality constant is the elastic modulus. If the stress and strain are longitudinal stress and longitudinal strain, that means only length is increased or length is decreased, there's change in length, then the elastic modulus is called Young's modulus. That's all. So be careful about the definition. Any query about stress, strain, Young's modulus? Strain is unitless. Stress is applied, internal force per unit area. That means its unit will be Newton per meter square. And Young's modulus is stress by strain within the elastic limit. Therefore, Young's modulus are the same unit. Newton per meter square in SI, in CGS, dyne per centimeter square. Here we will use CGS unit. Okay? Any query up to this?
Sir, which force is stress? Sir, tell me again, sir.
Which force is stress?
F by A. Sir, what is
F by A. Yes, ये है internal force per unit area. Because we are defining stress. Stress को define कर रहे हो. देखो longitudinal stress को define कर रहा हूँ. Internal force developed per unit area. So that is stress.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. So this Y is longitudinal stress by longitudinal strain within the elastic limit. So whenever you are asked in Viva Bose, define Young's modulus, that will be the first question. It is within the elastic limit, longitudinal stress to longitudinal strain is called Young's modulus. Is the unit Newton per meter square or dyne per centimeter square? Okay. Now this Young's modulus is related to stiffness of the material. What is the Young's modulus? Why we require Young's modulus? Young's modulus measures the resistance of the material to deform under weight. That means a material with higher Young's modulus means it has higher resistance to the deformation. You want to deform the material by applying some force, and it is resisting it. More Young's modulus means more resistance it can provide. More stiff will be the material. So a stiff material means it has a high Young's modulus, and its shape can only be changed under high amount of elastic load. And flexible material means it has low Young's modulus. So if you just like think of rubber has this low Young's modulus. Rubber has a low Young's modulus. That's why it is easy to deform a rubber. This is a less flexible material. Is not a stiff material, it's a flexible material. So in school days, generally you are asked a particular question, which has higher Young's modulus, now rubber or steel? Of course it will be steel, because if you want to deform steel, you require more force. Whereas you require actually very small amount of force to deform a rubber. So rubber has low Young's modulus. It is flexible material. Whereas stiff material means which has higher value of Young's modulus. By the way, please understand, strong material and stiff material are not same. Strong material means it requires high load to permanently deform it or break it. And stiff material means we want to deform it, but whenever the applied force is removed, it should come back to its original configuration. So we want to elastically deform it. So, and I'm giving you an example. Which type, why I want stiff material rather than strong material? Because in defined situation, I require stiff material, which can be bent, but it will come back to the original configuration. Okay. Next one example. Yes. What is your question?
Sir, now Sand is telling that we need a stiff material rather than a strong material, because strong material breaks if we
Exactly. It can be either broken or permanently deformed. But sometimes you do not require. Like if you want a bridge, you are always giving so many load on it. You are using bicycles. You are using furniture. We are always using load on it. Do you want permanent deformation that the furniture? Suppose this is the shelf you want. Do you always want the shelf to look like this? When you are applying some books, or when you are placing some books on it, you are placing some books on it. So you do not want permanent deformation, or you do not want the shelf to be broken, or the bridge. But whenever the load is applied to it, it should be stiff enough to handle it. That means when the load is given to it, it will be deformed, but not deformed. It will be change its configuration. But as soon as the load is removed, say at night when there is no people on the road, on the bridge, then it will come back to its original configuration. That we want for the bridge. That's why we require stiff material to make this bridge, not a strong material. Strong material can hold the load up to some extent, but when the load will be sufficiently high, then it will either be broken or permanently deformed. Another example, in sports, we are using so many items which require stiff materials, like pole vaults. In the pole vault, these poles, do you want it to be broken during a particular game? No. We do not want it to be deformed. What we want, that when you are applying the load like this, it will bend. But due to that bending, is elastic energy will be converted into the kinetic energy of that person. So we are using that elastic energy to our usable energy. So here the material we are choosing has a high value of stiffness, not strong material. That means it should have a high Young modulus. Another is bungee jumping. Bungee jumping. Do you want this rope to be broken during bungee jumping or deformed? No. So you require stiff material of high Young's modulus. That's why whenever we have some design criteria, whether it is in sports or in aircraft, in bicycle, everywhere, stiffness is required. We require high elastic modulus, like high Young's modulus. And that's why we are understanding it. Any query up to this? Now, how we will perform this experiment? Here, our objective is to measure the Young's modulus of a material of a bar. So, this is the bar. This is the bar. Let me change the color. This is the bar. This is a steel bar or iron bar, whatever you say, that whose dimension is known. So it's and we want the Young modulus of the material of this bar, because Young's modulus is a property of the material, not of the bar. That means if the same bar is made of three different materials, one is made of say iron, one is made of say copper, one is made of say silver, the Young's modulus will be different, but configuration remains same. So it is a property of the material. Please understand, it's a property of the material. That's why it is written as determination of the Young's modulus of a material of a bar. Okay, so we want to find out that for this bar, what are the apparatus we require? We require two supports and two knife edges. These are the knife edges. We'll observe it. This bar is placed on the two knife edges, and the effective length will be between the two knife edges. That will be the effective length. So this is the distance. That length will be considered only. And at the center of this bar, we will apply force. How will we apply force? With the help of some weights. We'll use 250 grams weights at a time. So first 0, then 250 grams, then 500, 750, and so and so. So we'll continuously increase the weight or decrease the weight. And as a result, deformation will be created. That means when there was no load, it is expected that's how the bar will look like. Excuse my drawing. So this is between the two knife edges. Say this is the knife edges. When there is no load, this is the expected thing. When a slight load is applied at the center, then what type of deformation we expect? I'm drawing it in a larger way so that we understand it. But actual deformation will be very small, so small that by our naked eye we do not understand it. That there is a deformation. That's why we require sophisticated instrument, microscope, to change, to observe that change. If I give more load, more deformation will be observed, and so and so. But it is also expected that when this weight is removed, it will come back to the original configuration. That means when there will be no load, it will come back to this configuration. Okay. So this is our traveling microscope from the top view. This is the screw. There are, if I rotate this screw, then vertical movement of the apparatus will be done by rotating this screw. We'll place our eyes here. We call this eyepiece. We place our eye near the eyepiece, and from this objective lens, we'll observe the position. What position? We'll understand. We'll observe it. So before that, let's talk about the theory. Young modulus. Why? I'm not going into how that formula is derived. That is not required here. Is related to this formula. G L cube by 4b d cube m by x. G is the gravitational constant at a place. So we can take that value as 9.8 or 980 centimeter per second square. L is the length. Which length? As I have said, effective length. That means between the two knife edges. Between the two knife edges. This length. Between the two knife edges. That is the effective length. So we can have it say 50 centimeter, 60 centimeter, and so and so. B and D are breadth and thickness of the material. We can measure them with the help of slide calipers, or at the time of exam, that can be given to you. So in this particular experiment, Tushar sir, in their data, B and D are supplied, or do we need to estimate it?
B and D are supplied to their data.
Okay. So in your case, B and D are supplied. So we will treat them as constant. But even if it is not given, we can measure it because we know the process. We can use the slide calipers, simple slide calipers, measure the breadth and thickness. Okay. So all these quantities can be measured. Actually, they are given. When B and D are not measured, then all the quantities are given to us. We are not estimating them. Right? Next, M and X. We are supplying the masses, and due to each mass, as I have said, we are supplying the mass at the center. It is not the proper view, so we will observe the proper view, the actual case, and in that case, you will observe that we will supply the weight at the center with the help of this thing. This is a hanger. There is a hanger. There is a hanger like this. Okay, we can place our weight at this hanger, and this hanger is placed at the center. Okay, and you observe that this hanger is associated with this thing, which is a tip. We'll observe it better, then we'll explain it in a better way. So the point I am making is that we'll change the masses, and as a result, deformation will be created. We'll measure the deformation, how we'll understand, and then we'll plot it. That mass versus deformation. And from that experimental curve, we'll find out the ratio of m by x for any non-experimental point. So all the quantities are now known. We put them and get the Young's modulus. Okay. So for that, so this is the rectangular bar, and these are the knife edges. These are the knife edges. We are placing the bar between the two knife edges. So effective length will be between the two knife edges. This is our effective length, right? And when you are supplying some weight, then there will be deformation. There will be the deformation. And neutral axis is called, you observe, when deformation occurs, the central line, this line is not actually deformed, its length is not changed. All the lines, suppose this line above will be less deformed, while with comparison to this line below. So, but the line which is not deformed at all is called neutral axis. Okay, that is different issue. I'm not going into that. So this is the instrument, as I have told you. Okay, now first we observe the demonstration. So it's only.
Good afternoon, students. First of all, I show you the different instruments used in this experiment. The total setup looks like this. Okay, and this is the rectangular shape iron bar, and above the iron bar, some marks are already placed, some numbers are already written above the iron bar. And now you can see the knife head. One knife head is placed at 50 centimeter. This is the 50 mark. And another knife head is also in 50 centimeter, and the stirrup or the hanger is placed at 0 position. This is the center position of the bar, and in the both sides there is 50 centimeters. So total effective length of the bar is 100 centimeters. And this is the hanger. You can see this is the hanger. Okay. And this is the iron stand with adjustable screws are there. You can use these screws to make the iron bar horizontal. And these are the loads of 250 grams. Each of the loads of 250 grams. Then now this is the vertical screw with a traveling microscope by which you can vertically align the particular pointer with a horizontal line by rotating the screw. This is the telescope.
Just a
And
second.
these are the main scale and vernier scale. This is the vernier scale. Small scale is the vernier scale, and this is the main vertical scale from which you have to take the readings. And now I show you the pointer. Now you can see this is the pointer which is inverted. Actually inverted. You can see the inverted image of the pointer, and just pointer head is just touching the horizontal line. Now on the hanger there is 0 load. So first of all, you have to note down the main scale and vernier scale reading for the 0 load. Then you have to put 250 grams load on the hanger. So I will place the 250 gram load on the hanger, and you can observe the pointer is going above from the horizontal line. This is little bit above the horizontal line for the 250 gram loads. Now I make it again. I touch this pointer head to the horizontal line by rotating the vertical screw of the traveling microscope. Now it is close to horizontal line. Now it is touching the horizontal line again. So for this 250 grams load, I make it actually this pointer head is touching the horizontal line after the 250 gram load is given in the hanger. Then again you have to note down the main scale reading and vernier scale reading for this. So this is the first step. Again you have to put another 250 gram loads on the hanger. So the total load will be on the hanger is 500 grams. And for this you can see again the pointer is going above the horizontal line. So you have to make it again touch with the horizontal line by rotating the vertical screw. So now it is touching the horizontal line for 500 grams. So again you have to note down the main scale and vernier scale reading for this 500 grams. So this is the procedure how you have to increase the load, and for each and every case you have to note down the main scale and vernier scale reading after adjusting the pointer exactly touching with the horizontal line. Now I show you the mean scale and vernier scale reading for 0 load. quite a little bit. But
Just a second. Sir is adjusting it.
okay, now you can see this is the vernier scale, and this is a arrow mark at the below of the vernier scale. This is the 0 mark of the vernier scale. This 0 mark exactly crossing our main scale. You can see
Please remember
It is
here
crossing
between
the
two long lines.
7.45 mark. This is the 7.45 mark which is crossing the 0. So the main scale reading will be 7.45, and then you have to find out the vernier reading from lower side to upper side of the vernier scale. So this is the 0 mark. This is not exactly coinciding with the main scale mark, so we have to go upwards and just find out the exact vernier number which is coinciding with the main scale mark. So it seems to me the 45th division, 45 number division of the vernier scale is exactly coinciding with the main scale mark. So the vernier reading will be 45, and you already got the main scale reading, that is 7.45. So what will be the total reading now? You have to multiply 0.001 with a vernier reading, which is 45. Then you add this 2 with this main scale reading 7.45. Then you can get the total reading. So this is the procedure. Now, the second load is actually placed on the hanger. First load is placed on the hanger. So 250 grams is now on the hanger, and due to this, the vertical pointer is going above. So you have to make it down by moving the vertical screw. After adjusting this, again you have to note down the main scale and vernier scale reading for 250 grams. Now we can see what is the main scale reading now. The 0 mark of the vernier scale is now crossing the 7.35 mark. So this will be the main scale reading. And then find out the vernier coincidence. The vernier coincidence will be thirty-three. You can see this is the vernier coincidence with the main scale mark. So vernier reading is now 33. So you have to multiply 0.001 which is 33, and then add with the 7.35 main scale reading. Then you can get the total reading for 250 grams load. And if you take the difference between these two, you can get the depression for 250 grams. And you have to continue this process up to 1250 grams.
So, what we are doing here, between these two knife edges, we have placed our bar whose Young's modulus of the material we want to calculate, and that's why what we are doing, we are using a knife edge. You can observe this is the knife edge. This is the knife edge. So if I look at it, it will look like this. This is the knife edge. Okay, and when you observe the demonstration by the traveling microscope, we are just observing the inverted image of this. That's why we observe the inverted image. It looks like this. And when there was no load, only the hanger is placed, then we adjust this screw to make that pointer touching the horizontal line. Horizontal line these horizontal and vertical lines are given in this eyepiece. Within that eyepiece, that horizontal and vertical lines are there. Our job is to place this line, this inverted image on the horizontal line, touching the horizontal line. We do not bother about the vertical position, whether the vertical line is here or not, we do not bother. Only the point is we place it on the horizontal line. And under that situation, we need to get the main scale and vernier reading, because here we want to observe or we want to get the data with most probable accuracy. And that's why instead of a normal linear scale, we are using traveling microscope, because we know in case of traveling microscope, if you remember our first discussion, that if we use traveling microscope, then the smallest division, the least count of the instrument is very, very small. If in case of a normal scale, least count is 0.1 centimeter, for slide calipers it is 0.01 centimeter. If we use the traveling microscope, then it will be 0.001 centimeter. So we can get up to 3 decimal places. And how we are doing this? We are using a linear scale. As Sarah has shown you, this is the linear scale, and there is a vernier attached to it. So this is the vernier attached to it. And we require to take the reading of the both. So this is the thing we have observed, that when we want to take a reading, then that position should be observed. That means the inverted image of that pointer should touch the horizontal line like this. Okay. You understand it is very difficult to show you through image or through a video, but still we have tried so that we can observe it. This is the magnified image. You observe that the tip is touching the horizontal line. So under the situation, we need to take the readings. And how Sarah has mentioned that how to take the readings. First of all, you observe that this is a linear scale, but it is not a normal linear scale. In a normal linear scale, between any two numbers, say between 8 and 9, 10 divisions are there. But here we have 20 divisions. If you can observe it properly, you can see there are 20 divisions between 8 and 9. That means value of one smallest division in this case is 0.05 centimeter. In general, we have 0.1 centimeter in normal linear scale. Whatever scale you have used before, like in case of laser diffraction, you have used scale. It is 0.1 centimeter, but now it is 0.05 centimeter. Because between 8 and 9, there are 20 divisions. Between 8 and 7, there are 20 divisions. So value of 1, 0.05. Right? And how many divisions are there in the vernier? In general, vernier has 10 divisions. But in this particular case, we have 50 divisions. Don't bother about these values. Only just check you have 50 divisions. And we know how to measure the vernier. Vernier measurement, we know the process. Still, I am repeating it. We'll check how many divisions are there in the vernier. So if there are 50 divisions of the vernier, then 50 vernier scale division is equivalent to one less number of normal scale division. That means it should be with 49 main scale division. We discussed in detail why that would give you most accuracy. Otherwise, the instrument is of no use. If 50 division is equivalent to say 48 main scale division, then it is same as 25 VSD equal to 24 MSD. Then why do I require this long material? Because it is costly. So for better accuracy, 50 VSD should be equivalent to one less, that is 49 MSD, right? That is 1 VSD equals to 49 by 50 MSD. And what is the value of 1 MSD? One main scale division value is 0.05 centimeter, right? So how will you calculate the vernier constant or least count in this instrument? Vernier constant or least count is 1 minus, or better to say first 1 MSD minus 1 VSD. And now what is 1 MSD? 1 VSD is, first I am writing 1 MSD minus 1 VSD is 49 by 50 MSD. I am showing you the main process again. So it is 1 minus 49 by 50 MSD that is 1 by 50 MSD. Now 1 by 50. Now what is MSD? MSD is 1 MSD is 0.05 centimeter. So if I dividing it by 50, then it is 0.001 centimeter. Or I told you another process. Just divide MSD by number of divisions of the vernier. You get the same result if the instrument is correct. 0.001 centimeter. So that is the thing. Next, how we are taking the reading. So we require main scale value, vernier value. As I mentioned, you need to check this pointer. This pointer. Let me change the color. It will be best here. This is the pointer. So you will need to check what is the position of the lowest line of the vernier. Like here, it is between these two lines. It is between these two lines. If it is between these two lines, this is 7. So this is 6.95. This will be 6.9. This will be then 6. This will be then 6.8. So it is between 6.85 and 6.9. It is between. Sorry, my mistake. Let me check 6.8, 6.9. 6.8. It is between 6.8. It is between 6.8 and 6.85. It is between these two. This is 6.8 and this is 6.85. We'll always take the lower value. So we'll take 6.8 as the main scale value. So main scale value will be 6.8 centimeter. Right? How we are checking it is 6.8? We are checking the longer line. So this is 7. Then next longer line will be 6.9 because we know smallest division is 0.05. So this is 7, then 6.95, then 6.9, then 6.85, then 6.8. So it is between 6.8 and 6.85. So we'll take the always lower value. So 6.8. Next, that is the main scale value. Then vernier value. We'll check out of these 50 vernier lines, which one is coinciding with the main scale line. Coinciding means this is same vernier line, this is same main scale line. They are coinciding. This is not coinciding. This is not coinciding. This one is coinciding. Okay, so we'll check which one. Which one is coinciding? Which of these 50 is coinciding with the main scale? That's why we require a magnifying glass to observe it. So far I understand this line, this one is coinciding. So what will be the vernier value then? 30. 30th vernier is coinciding. So vernier value is 30 into vernier constant. So it's a better view. Better view. So you observe these two lines are coinciding. These two lines are coinciding with each other. So that's why we take 30. So how we are making the tables? First of all, vernier constant of the traveling microscope. So this is the table we need to fill up. So how many vernier scale divisions are there? 50. Coinciding 49 main scale. Value of one smallest division of the main scale, 0.05 centimeter. So L2 will be C by A. C by A means 49 by 50. Whatever we have discussed is written in the format. That's the difference. So L1 minus L2, it will be 1 by 50 into 0.05, that is 0.001 centimeter. Done. So first table, that's what I have done. Now the second table, the most important table. What we are doing? It is the load depression table. First, length between the two knife edges. Sir has shown you that we can change the knife edges so that the effective length will be a particular value. In that particular case, that was 100 centimeter. So whatever the value, that value will be given, like here also 100 centimeter. The data I am using. So now, initially there is no load in the hanger. Under the situation, we will find out the position of the main scale and vernier scale. Under that case, then we will increase the load by 250 gram each up to 1250 and find out the main scale and verniers. Right? right? And calculate the total. Then we'll decrease the load. That means from two, so we'll just repeat it. We'll just repeat this value. Yes? Anyone has any query? We'll just repeat it. We'll just repeat this value here. Then we'll decrease 250 at a time. So next 1000 will again calculate main scale, vernier, total up to 0. Why we are doing this? Because to avoid random error. Then we will find out the mean value. Mean value means total for 0, total for 0. Total for 250, total for 250, then average. We get the A plus B by 2. I'm giving you an example so that you will understand it better. Suppose for a knife edge length of 100 centimeter, initially when there was no load, then main scale was 7.65. That means it was between 7.65 and 7.7 centimeter. So we take the lowest value, 7.65, right? And out of 50 vernier divisions, we have observed that ninth vernier line is coinciding with the main scale line. Coinciding means this is coinciding with the ninth main scale line is coinciding with the main scale line. Which main scale line is immaterial? The point is which vernier line is coinciding? Ninth vernier line. So we multiply with vernier constant, so we get 0.009, right? Similarly, when the load is 250 gram, then main scale will be changed because as Sir was showing that we have placed the knife edge like this. Suppose this is the horizontal line for 0, but whenever the load is increased, then the knife edge will be shifted. Knife edge will be shifted. So we need to use the screw to again place the knife edge on the horizontal line. So since we are rotating the screw, the main scale or vernier value will be changed. Like here, main scale value is now changed to 7.55 centimeters. So all are in centimeter. Okay, 7.55 centimeter. And in this case, we observe that 18th vernier is coinciding with the main scale value. 18th vernier. Therefore, we multiply with vernier constant to get 0.018. We add main scale with vernier. So we add this one with this to get this one. So we'll do the same for all the loads. So in your case, what will be given to you? You will be given these main scale values. These main scale values will be given to you, load values, and the vernier reading will be given, not the value. Vernier reading will be given. So you need to multiply with vernier constant to get the vernier value. Then you need to calculate the total, right? So you get the totals. Now you observe for 1250, when we have reached to the maximum load, then that is repeated here. You observe 7.15, 20. Same value repeated. Then we are decreasing the load. So now load is decreasing. It is expected value remains almost constant. So that's why you observe all the main scale values remains constant. Only vernier is changed slightly. That's what we want to get more accuracy. So now for 1000 gram weight, main scale value is 7.25, vernier reading is 13, so vernier value will be 13 into 0.001, 0.013. We add 7.25 with 0.013 to get 7.26, and the process continues. So here we are going in this direction. So once we get the total readings, that is main scale plus vernier for all the situations, all the weights, including 0, then we need to take the average. Average means, so say for first one, this is the total during increasing, and this is the total during decreasing. You take the average, that means just add them and then divide by 2. So the same will be repeated. Only the last one remains same. Only the last one remains same, because we have not changed it. It is not possible. So this is the mean value, right? Now what we require? We require the depression. How much depression occurs due to the load? Because that we need. So now understand it. Suppose this is the position of the bar when there was no load, right? So what we have observed, this position. So this load has a knife edge. This is the knife edge. The knife edge is attached. We are placing the position of the knife edge. So if I know the position of the knife edge, that means I know the position of the bar also. What is the position of this bar at the center? That I know because the knife edge is associated with that bar. Now when weight is given, then bar is slightly depressed. Bar is slightly depressed. Excuse my drawing. It is the middle. It is at the middle. It is at the middle. Now, when the load is increased, it is slightly deformed. So this is how much depression. This is the amount of depression. Because at this condition, this will be the position of the knife edge again. We can focus the knife edge position, and actually that is the reading. So how will you get the depression? Subtract this one from the 0 point. So this minus this, you will get the value. When there was no load, there was no depression. Simple. When there was no load, no depression. But when the first load is applied, 250 gram. When the first load is applied, the 250 gram, then the change or depression is between these two. You know how we are measuring the depression? The position of this pointer and position of this pointer. This is your depression. This is the depression. This is the depression position. Okay, so if I can, this position I know, that is 7.6615. This position I know, that is 7.5695. So what is the change? This is your depression. Depression for load 250 grams. That will be 0.0920. Next load is applied 250 grams. So more depression will occur. More depression will occur. Now the pointer is, say, at this point position. So what will be the depression now? This is the depression. So initially pointer was here, 0 case, then 250 grams, pointer is here. So depression is this. Now at 50 grams, pointer is here. So depression is this. So how are you measuring the depression? From the 0 load condition. So always measure the depression. That means in the third case, for 50 grams, how you are measuring the depression? 7.6615 minus 7.4620. That will give you this value. So always measure the position from the initial one. So if for 750, this is the position of the pointer, how you are measuring the depression? This is the depression, and the process continues. So for each load, you can calculate the depression, and how are you measuring the depression? From the central value, from the initial value, So let me erase it again. That means the first depression 0, because there is no load in the hanger. When load is 250, then how we are measuring the depression? By this difference. That will be your depression. When the load is 500 gram, then depression will be between these two. That will be your depression. When load is 750, then this will be your difference. That will be, you are observing depression is increasing continuously. So if we plot it, load versus depression, due to applied load, depression occurs. So load versus depression. So how many points we have? From 0 to 1250, we have 6 points. So don't forget about 0 points. So one is at 0, and then 5 points. What we need to do? So first, use the maximum portion of the graph paper. Accordingly, scale it, and then plot. So you get some points, 6 points, including 0. Then we just connect them. How will you connect them? we'll draw an average graph. We'll draw an average graph. All the points may or may not lie on the line. That is not an issue. That means if instead of this, it was here, no problem. But try to draw a mean graph. So that some line, some points on the left, some points on the right, some points on the above, some points on the below. So that is the linear fit. So once we have the fitted graph, next take a non-expandable point. So non-expandable point means what points we have? 0, 250, 500, 750, 1000, 1250, etc. Take any value instead of this. So when we draw it, you can choose, say 1000 is there, so you can choose 1100, you can choose 1200, you can choose 250, 200, you can choose 400, you can choose 600, etc. These are not experimental points. But my suggestion, take the value from a longer side. Like here we have chosen M as 1100 grams because in that case your error can be minimized. But if you choose it in the lower side also, no one can reduce your marks. But my suggestion, choose from the higher side. So this is a non-experimental point. So which point you have chosen for M? 1100 grams. So for 1100 grams, you just draw a dash line. It intersects just like laser diffraction. It intersects the axis, intersects the straight line at this point. Then from that point, draw another dash line. It intersects the y-axis, that is depression here. So you can calculate the value of depression. If for my case, it is 0.43 centimeter. Bas. Now we are ready for calculation. That's what we require. That is the thing we require. So we have discussed this. So now calculation. So for calculation, you observe this table. At the last table, you have the calculation table. By the way, in the manual, I do not remember the number of the tables. The breadth and depth tables are there. You need not to draw those tables because as I mentioned, breadth and depth are supplied. So the corresponding tables are not required. TKD sir, can you tell us what are the number of the tables? Slide calipers and breadth thickness tables? Of course. Check it. Meanwhile, I will continue. So you need not to draw those tables. What you require actually two tables to draw. One for the Vernier constant of the microscope and another is the load depression table. So table 1 and table 2, these two tables are required. And then this table, the last one, where you summarize all the quantities like L, that is length between the knife edges, M from the graph, that means what we have chosen. We have chosen 1100 gram. So that one. And for that gram, what is the depression from the graph? This from graph. That was 0.43 centimeter. Breadth and depth are supplied to us. So we write these values. 1.23 and 0.65 centimeters respectively. G is 980 centimeter per second square. So now we are ready for the calculation. So now calculate Young's modulus. Yes.
There are 6 tables there in their manual, including the table of depth and breadth, but they do not need to draw this table. The depth and breadth are supplied to them. That's why they can omit this table.
So point is that means they need to draw first, second, and the last table only. So now we'll calculate it. We'll calculate the Young's modulus because we have the table now, which contains all the required quantities. So if we put them in the formula, first G is 980, L cube, L is 100 centimeter. As I told you earlier, we are measuring in CGS scale. So L cube is 100 cube, then 4, B is 1.23, D cube, that is 0.65 cube. Then M by X, M we have chosen 1100 gram, and for that gram, for that load, depression was estimated from the graph as 0.43 centimeters. So we put them. So if we calculate it, it comes out to be say 1.85543 into 10 to the power 12 dyne per centimeter square. Since we do not know what to truncate, we have written 5 digits after decimal place. There's the common process we follow. Yeah, we will only truncate at the time of writing the conclusion. So this is our Young's modulus. Done? Simple calculation. As I told you earlier, only difficult thing in this this experiment is to take the reading. But once it is taken, it is easy. Calculation is very easy. And graph is linear graph. So it's also easy.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. They always ask what we have to write under the heading of calculation.
Okay.
The calculation will be like this. Just you have to write down the working formula, then put all the values in the working formula, then calculate by the calculator and write the ultimate value.
Like this. Like this, I is saying. So you need to write the formula, then put the values in the places, then calculate it with your calculator and put the value. That is required to write in calculation because why we are making it as a practice, because in the semester exam there is a lot of marks allotted for calculation, so that you can get that marks. Okay. In theory, we give less amount of marks. So this is our Young's modulus. Next thing, we need to truncate it. So you require the error. So if this is our formula, this is the formula and this is the value. Now, if B and D are measured, if they are measured, then what will be the proportional error? I told you that here G, L, Q, 4, these are constant, right? Constant do not contribute error. So total errors will be given by B, D, M and X. And that formula will be delta B by B. If I take log, then 3 will come out. So 3 delta D by D, then M by delta M by X, delta M by M, then delta X by X. Error is always additive, so it doesn't matter whether they are in the numerator or denominator. This means total error or proportional error when you try to measure B. Similarly, this one is total error when you try to measure mass, and so and so. Right? Now, in our case, we are not measuring breadth and depth. B and D are not measured. Therefore, they are treated as constant. As I told you earlier, whatever you are not measuring, you treat it as constant. So, B and D are our constant. So, this whole thing will look like constant. So, can you tell me what will be our delta Y by Y now? Cannot hear you. Delta M by M? Right. Right. So it is delta M by M plus delta X by X. Because B and D are not measured, they are given. So we do not bother about them. They cannot contribute to the error because we are not measuring. I will say error only when I measure. If someone has measured it and given it to me, why should I bother about his or her error? Right? So this is our error now. Error formula, delta Y by M. Now put the value. What is delta M? First, M and X we know. M and X we have already estimated from the graph. Now, what will be delta M, delta X? Delta M is the smallest division along X-axis and delta X is the smallest division along Y-axis. That's why I always tell you, try to draw the graph in such a way that maximum portion can be utilized, so that delta M and delta X will be as small as possible. And that's why we have taken higher side of M, so that M will be larger. Right? So suppose 40 division, that means along X-axis, for 40 divisions, 250 grams are taken. So between 40 divisions, so this is 0, this is 40, this is 60, sorry, 80, etc. Between 40 divisions, 250 grams is taken. That's how I have plotted it along X-axis. By the way, you plot it in this mode, portrait mode, because this one is not important. M has a particular way of increasing, 250 grams increment, whereas X increases in a different way. So this one is important. So use maximum portion for X. So plot it in a portrait manner. Similarly, along y-axis, that means along x, suppose between 40 lines, suppose between these are 40 lines, between 40 lines, 0.1 centimeter is there. That means smallest division is 0.1 by 40. Okay, so that you can write. So that will be your delta m, delta x. Because here we are measuring from graph. In Hall, we have measured from graph. In laser, we have measured from instrument. And here we are also measuring from graph. Yes.
Sir, if we rotate the graph paper, it will okay.
No, dekho. If we rotate it, dekho. Why I am saying in this way? Because along this direction, if you check your graph, you will observe along this direction, there are 20 divisions. Along this division, there are 20 main divisions. That means total 200 divisions are there. Along this length. Along this length, 250 divisions are there. And I am saying that x is more important. Because m has m is 0, 250, 500. You can put it easily. But it will be difficult for putting x. So give preference to x. X को preference दो. इसीलिए x को ज़्यादा value दो. So x को इसीलिए portrait mode बोल रहा हूँ मैं. That's why my suggestion that you use it as a portrait mode so that x gets better chance. X has now 250 lines, 250 boxes.
I'm telling that if we rotate the graph paper whole, then it will be same like.
Rotate the graph paper whole
means the paper is like portrait mode. I rotate it in landscape mode.
No, x. Suppose this is your graph. This is the graph. X will be along m will be along x-axis. This will be along y-axis, right? Now we can draw it either in this way, landscape mode. That means this is m, this is x, or we can plot it in portrait mode. So that now it is m, it is x. My preference is this. In this way, plot it. Not in the landscape mode, in the portrait mode. So that m again along x-axis, y along y will be x-axis, depression. Get my point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So once we know this delta y by y, that means we just put delta m, delta x, m and x. M you are choosing, x you are getting, delta m, delta x you are using. So delta y by y is known. Then what we require? We require delta y. Delta y means delta y is y into delta y by y. That means multiply this quantity with this. That will be your delta y. So you will just multiply them. And when you multiply them, if you have power like this, you have a power, don't use that power in the multiplication. Like that means you are multiplying this whole thing, multiply between these two only. Power as it is. Keep power as it is. That means 0.0213 into 10 to the power 12. I can write it as 2.13 into 10 to the power 10 also. Isn't it? I can write it as 2.13 into 10 to the power 12 also.
Yes.
Don't write it. It will be easier. Don't write it. You will just multiply the quantities except power. Quantities except powers. So power को हटा दो. Just these दोनों को multiply करो. That will give you this result. Then power is there, no problem. Why? Because next thing what we require, y is this truncate, right? Now we need to truncate it. Now if the powers are same, then it is easier to compare and truncate. But if you do not have the same power, then it will be difficult. So why take more trouble to change the power? Rather, don't change it. That's why I told you, don't change the power. Just multiply the two quantities. Power remains same, right? And in Young's modulus, generally power comes of the disorder. So keep it in that way. So this is your y and this is your delta y. That is absolute error. in measurement of y. Right? Now tell me, the powers are same, so why do I truncate?
0.0.
8.5.
8.5.
Sir, 8.5.
Right.
I think I truncate it.
Right, very good. Because if I just add these two or subtract these two, first digit no change, from second digit onward change starts. So we truncate here. Or if we just count the number of zeros in the error, how many zeros are there after decimal? 1. We add another 1, so 2. We truncate here. Therefore, final result 1.85 plus minus 0.02 into 10 to the power 12 dyne per centimeter square. So again, you are not giving a single value to your client. What you are giving? You are giving a range. You are giving 1.83 into 10 to the power 12 to 1.87 10 to the power 12 dyne per centimeter square. You are giving a range. Any value within the range is correct for that instruments. Right? That's why this is our final result. This is our conclusion. Then discussion. You can write discussion, and as mentioned earlier, don't write should be, must be, because that is given to you. You should not do that. But whenever you are writing it, you are writing either you have done it or in passive way. So thank you very much. We are ending our session here.